Hello, we are lawyers from eLaw Alliance. My name is Herman Jangri. I'm accompanied by Peter Poon and Janan Jira. We are all experienced in criminal law, so for today's topic of discussion, we were thinking we would just provide some background about what happens on a criminal file and essentially the proceeding of a criminal file. So I'm just going to open this up to discussion. So could you guys tell me a little bit about the background of what happens when a person is first initially charged with a criminal offense, and what do we do as lawyers?
So first thing is, one of the first steps in a criminal process is to order disclosure. Disclosure is the package of information or evidence used against an accused person. Any victim statements, police reports, any of the evidence collected against a person is going to be in their disclosure, and they're entitled to a copy of it, and you're able to order it from the prosecutor's office, and they now provide it online in a digital format. So that would be one of the first steps, is get a copy of your disclosure. If you don't have a lawyer, you got to review it, but if you have a lawyer, they will definitely review it for you.
Yeah, I think disclosure for criminal file is basically the core of the file. Is what the first of all, in a criminal matter, the charge against you, we think of it as an application by the Crown. So they're presenting their case. They're also held to a standard where they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you were the one that committed the specific offense that you're being charged with. So disclosure is kind of the important piece of information, because it kind of lays out what the charges are against you, what the information to substantiate that those charges against you, and there will be all sorts of information in there. I think one of the first things I do on a review of a disclosure is look at the charges and then look at the summary by the police force. This kind of gives me a overview of what the alleged facts or alleged circumstances are that make up the charge to what the police are alleging you have committed. And then from there, I kind of go into the detail of what this officer said, what this alleged victim said, if there are any statements, and whether there are any other supporting documents in there. So this is kind of where, as a criminal lawyer practice, we start, is going through that, and obviously speaking to the clients about what they understand the charges to be, and what they understand the alleged facts to be.
And yeah, just jumping on that disclosure will also include things like pictures, any audio clips, videos. For example, in a theft, you'll usually see a store that they have their own video. So you, as the offender or the alleged offender, you are entitled to all that information. So they can't hide that from you. They can't not disclose that to you. You are entitled to all that information and to see that. And with that disclosure, that will usually, as lawyers when we review it, that will usually give us an idea of how strong that case is against you, or if there is any potential weaknesses in the case against you. And just to jump on that, with disclosure, we also usually order something called ECR. That is an offer from the Crown. Now that offer is something to settle the matter, and they'll usually give you, for example, in an assault, they might say you do certain conditions or you go jail time. Those kind of things will be provided to you from the Crown in terms of what is reasonable in the circumstances in terms of an offer.
Right, ECR stands for Early Case Resolution Offer, and Herman's right, it's one of the things you ask for right up front so that you know what your jeopardy is. Are you looking at jail time or not? So it's definitely something that you want to, like disclosure, order early on in the process. Now, guys, what about if you've got disclosure and you notice that there are things missing in the disclosure? Let's say you're charged with theft, they mentioned something about surveillance, but you don't have it in your package of disclosure. What can you do?
What I usually do is, once I've gone over disclosure at least a couple times, I write down things that I would be interested in getting more of, or would want more information on, because it's mentioned in the disclosure package already. I guess at the end of the day, don't expect the Crown Prosecutor is just going to hand over every single item that they have or every single piece of information that they have. Perhaps they are by law having to do that, but a lot of times they might not have it themselves because they're relying on the police forces to get them that information. And Crown Prosecutors has a lot of files on their hand as well. They may not have gotten to reviewing yours. So it's what we usually do as due diligence is to write to the Crown Prosecutor requesting those additional disclosure. So at least we alert them to the fact that we are looking for more information because it's already mentioned in here. Or it might be information that's not mentioned, but you think reasonably would be available to the Crown Prosecutor through the police, and it's something that the Crown Prosecutor would look at and request it from the police force. Just kind of going back, what the ECR is the ECR is really an opinion from the Crown Prosecutor of what they believe based on what they see in the disclosure as to be your sentence if you were to resolve it, and they certainly at least I hope take into consideration some of the factors that you are when they're making the ECR, that you're going to be offering a guilty plea to resolve the matter, and the sentence that they're asking for in that may not necessarily be the same if you were to proceed with a trial and be found guilty of those charges, because again it's not a resolution anymore and they would have to expense a little more resources to prove the charges against you.
Yeah, and just to jump on that, as part of the ECR, that's simply an offer. You don't have to accept that. And if it's something that you don't believe is acceptable, you could put your own offer towards a judge in terms of a guilty plea and give your own offer to the judge, where the judge can decide whether to agree with the Crown or to agree with you. And of course, in not accepting the offer, you could also go towards trial. But just to jump back for a second, we talked about disclosure and the offer and additional disclosure. So once you have all of those things, what would be the next steps that you guys would do?
I think in my case, I definitely review disclosure multiple times, like Peter and Herman I know does too, looking specifically for things related to potential charter breaches. This might be something more complicated for a self-represented person to figure out, but something that a trained lawyer should be able to spot. And the charter breaches are things that you will find out just by reviewing the disclosure. As an example, disclosure will tell you, did the police have a proper authority to stop the individual who was arrested, to talk to the individual? Did the police acquire and collect the evidence in a legal way? Police don't have unfettered discretion to just arrest people and collect evidence any which way they want. There are specific rules that they too have to obey, and if they don't or they make a mistake, a trained lawyer can, through reviewing disclosure, see those errors and make attempts to argue that if it's a charter breach, evidence should be thrown out as a result. So there are options. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, Herman, on charter breaches, how to look for them in disclosure.
Yeah, definitely. So some of the things you want to look for is why the police might have stopped you. They have to have reason to stop you in most circumstances. Some of the other things you want to look at is whether they searched you, whether they did that properly, whether they had the legal right to search you, and other things you might want to look at is whether they gave you the right to counsel. Now that's very important here. It's also enshrined within the charter. So all of those kind of things are very important to determine the offense. While the offense might be proved, if there's a charter breach, you could potentially get rid of some information, some evidence that the Crown can then not use against you, which can officially end the whole case. So charter breaches are very important in the review of any disclosure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think since the Charter has come into force, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom really it enshrines all the citizens of Canada's their rights under the law, so that we live in a society where it's not dictated by, I guess, so to speak, the authorities, the police enforcement authorities, or anyone with government authorities, so to speak, over each person. So charter breaches are very important. They're significant. The courts take them very seriously. But also these are some of the things that are very technical and may be very difficult to identify if you are doing this on your own. So what we usually encourage people to do is if you want to represent yourself in a criminal case, that's fine, but at least try and have an opportunity to speak to a lawyer. All of us have to upkeep the confidentiality rule anyways by the Law Society, and we're not going to be speaking with anyone else, including the prosecutors, if we don't have express consent by you. So rest assured that whatever you're telling us, whatever you're showing us, is not going to be shared with anyone else unless you're expressly consenting to do so. So it's very important that at least you get a lawyer on board to kind of take a look at least the disclosure with you, so that we can help and see if we can identify any of these issues in the Crown's case that may be beneficial for you, and that kind could sway your decision in terms of whether you want to resolve the matter or whether the resolution of the offer by the Crown is reasonable, or you should be taking the matter to court.
Yeah. Thanks for that, guys. We're definitely going to be having more videos, talk a lot about these different topics because there's a lot to say. Thanks for joining us for this one, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.